Hey Baruch, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I found my little plaything for when we do our shows because otherwise I pull out my beard. So I'm happy. I was missing this last night, so I'm doing
Nice. I
good.
have my little stress ball over here, so it's
See,
exciting. So we're doing
this right
okay.
here is the secret to success: having
Oh
stress toys to play with.
yeah. Otherwise, I'm gonna be trying to like put my hands everywhere, so I have to
Yeah,
like fiddle with something.
this is good. This is
So
good.
that is cool. That is cool. So yeah, so we're in another episode, 22. 22 out
22.
of 25. So we're right there towards the end. This is
Yeah.
getting really. This is like coming down to the wire here. This is getting
Mhm.
serious. You know.
Oh yeah.
It's been a super incredible journey spending it with you as well and our incredible guests. And today we're going to get a chance to meet one of our highlight guests.
Yeah.
It's all about leadership. We're talking about leadership. We had a fun show today, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely did.
Earlier today,
Shots
that was
fired.
it. Shots were fired. Yeah. So I think, without further ado, we should bring in our highlight guest. Rick Davis is here today with
Yeah.
us. So here he is, Rick Davis.
Hi, Jeremy. Baruch, thank
Hello,
you for having
hello.
me on with the show tonight.
Thank
Thank you
you for
so much
joining
for
us.
joining. Yes.
And not only that, I'll also say thank you for being a one of our viewers, one of the members of our community. I mean, this is not in the official bio, but for those who don't know, Rick is here almost every single week, watching the live show, commenting, participating. But he also joins us on Thursdays in the clubhouse to contribute there, and he's got some of the world's greatest insights. And not only that, this is another thing. Rick has consistently brought people to the live show and to the clubhouse. I think we have 2 people there now that are because of you, Rick, something like that. So it's just like the fact that like we've gotten when Yurmi and I set out to do this, to create this, it was for the sake of community. And you are the prime example of the success of it, so to speak, and what you've been able to do. So thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being a
Thank you.
participant and now for being a contributor as well. So we really appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Well, let's get into the official bio so everybody gets to know who you are, and then I'll ask you some questions to kind of get things started. So our guest today is Rick Davis. He is the president of Impactus, Cultivating Today's Leaders. He's the author of The Furnace of Leadership Development, a member of the Maxwell Leadership Team, and a retired battalion chief from the Loveland Fire Rescue Authority in Colorado. He served as a firefighter for 37 years and with Loveland Fire for 30 years. Originally from New Jersey, Rick is a veteran of both the United States Air Force and the United States Marine Corps. I had no idea about that you did those both. I mean, I knew that you had military experience. I didn't know you did both. I'm not sure how they allowed you to do that because from what I hear, there's some internal conflict between the two, competition. But I guess that's, that leads into the next question of tell us more about who you are, what you do, and then how you got there. And then we'll dive into the kind of the guided section of the show.
Okay. Well, I'll start out by addressing the 2 branches of the military. Yes, you can, change branches of the military after you've served in one and you decide you want to go to, another one. I started with the Air Force first and then went to the Marine Corps. A lot of people have done it the other way around. So
Okay.
I always get some raised eyebrows like, oh, you went from the Air Force to the Marine Corps. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you mentioned, as you said here at the beginning of the show, I'm originally from New Jersey and in Colorado now. So a funny sidelight to that is very often I'm posed questions at the networking event. Hey, how did you get from Jersey to Colorado? I says, it's the witness protection program. How else? And just this year, I've had 2 people say, wow, really? I'm like, no, if that was true, I wouldn't be admitting that, But, I started out very young with the fire service. I had my first ride in a fire engine when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And my dad and my Uncle Kent had been volunteer firefighters in a department in southern New Jersey. And when I was 4, there was a large fire down in a small town along the Delaware Bay. And, as the trucks kept coming by, my dad would take me out to the street. And after that, he gave me his badge from when he'd been a volunteer.
Wow.
I still have that, here in a shadow box in my house. My Aunt Phyllis and Uncle Cliff lived next door, and she worked with a gentleman that was known as Frenchie. at the International Fire Mall dealership in town. Because I grew up in southern New Jersey. It's the part of the state, that earned the name the Garden State. And,
Wow.
there are a lot of people, think it's like Newark and Jersey City, places like that, and it's not. But Frenchie would send catalogs home with Aunt Phyllis, and she'd give them to me, fire department catalogs, and he'd make it possible for me to come down to the firehouse on drill nights, get up in the trucks and stuff like that. Wow. And so I just had this really burning desire, to be a firefighter. My dad had a bad heart, and unfortunately, when he was 41, he died of his 5th heart attack. I'm the one that found him. When I came home from school, we didn't have 911 then. You still dialed 0. Our fire company in town didn't have an ambulance, so it came from the one next to us. And when they were loading my dad's body in the back of the ambulance, I said, I'm going to do this for a career. Wow. And that was also, 1972 was when NBC released a television show, Emergency. Station 51, Johnny and Roy in Los Angeles County. And I watched that show every Saturday night. And also, I think it was the following year, 1973, a gentleman, a firefighter with FDNY, Dennis Smith. He was running with Engine Company 82 in the South Bronx. He wrote a book called Report from Engine Company 82. And when I read that book, it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
For me, I joined the fire company there in Cedarville, New Jersey when I was 18. I had been hanging around the firehouse about 6 months after my dad died. And eventually they started letting me clean hose, sweep the floors and stuff like that, in which, for me, that was a big thrill. And so the easiest way I felt for, me to become a paid firefighter was the military route. And so, I enlisted in the Air Force, didn't get in the fire department at first. And that's a whole different story, there. And I actually talk about it, in my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development. And they were going to send me back to my original career field. So I said no. And I became a civilian firefighter for the Air Force. Decided that I wanted to go to college. And I wasn't bright enough to figure out that, hey, I could go to college and still be a firefighter working a 24-hour shift at the same time. So I resigned, ran out of money. And that's how I wound up in the Marine Corps. Hey,
Love it.
We either go to the Marines or the French Foreign Legion,
Wow.
Can't speak French, so I went to the Marines. As a firefighter. And then lo and behold, one day comes along and this gunnery sergeant comes along, says there's too many NCOs and crash crew, Davis, pick a job. Gave me the MOS's military occupational specialty, gave me the MOS manual and a dream sheet. Go to the dream sheet because you're dreaming if you think you're going to get what you actually want.
Wow.
And so he sat there in that little room smoking a cigarette and drinking a cup of coffee, kept looking at his watch. Hurry up. I was like, hurry up. This is my future here. So I had 3 jobs, didn't get any one of them.
Wow.
They put me where they want me. It was aviation operations. I wound up back in North Carolina at Marine Air Station, Cherry Point, North Carolina. It was while I was there that friends of mine here in Colorado, I had been going to a church in Englewood, which is a suburb of Denver. He had gone to college with who became my future father-in-law, and they thought, oh, Rick and Deb, they would be good together. Well, September would be 35 years.
Wow.
We've been married 35 years, and we have 2. Thank you. We have 2 daughters, Rebecca and Emily. Rebecca's married to Nick. He's a career Air Force man, and Emily's married to Andrew, who's a hard worker in construction, and my daughter Emily, she also has her own business. She does freelance marketing part-time, and she also makes cake pops.
Nice.
Which I have a role in her company. She's titled me as the chief taste tester.
Oh,
yeah,
that's the best position.
Like that one.
So Deb and I, like I said, we've been married coming up on 35 years, and she's been a fantastic, supportive wife. Like Jeremy, listening to your story about you and your wife, and what people told you is like, hey, you will never find what you want. I was told the same thing. And it's like, well, that's not true because, God gave me the woman that I needed and that I wanted. And so, as I mentioned, total 37 years in the fire service, 30 of them here in Loveland, worked my way up through the ranks. And
Wow.
my last 15 were as a battalion chief. I did have a short stint in there as the training chief, but the bulk of my time was as a shift commander.
Wow.
Because Loveland still, we protect 200 square miles in our area, and we still have one battalion chief to cover all of that. Hence why the battalion chief here is also the shift commander. But that's what I loved doing. And then when I retired, switched over, I had written the book, which came out in November of 2019, started the business Impactus in June of 19. And so there was really a natural transition from what I was doing as a battalion chief, visiting the fire stations, not only sharing information with them, official information, but conversations so many times, would revolve around leadership and, of course, personnel issues. And you know what? When you're in a firehouse with people for 24 hours a day and they go as a group, we go as a group, it presents some unique challenges. And then in 2019, we went to a 48-hour shift. So now you've got people in the building for 48 hours, and it really presents some unique challenges, that you don't find in other professions. So, by and large, that's it all in a nutshell.
Incredible.
How I got to where I'm at right now.
Wow.
That is incredible. And I mean, I've heard this story, I don't know, by now so many times.
Yeah.
It's as mind-boggling every single time. It's as inspiring every single time. And it's, we were driving by the fire department over here. We actually recently were moving, and our new house is literally across the street from the fire department. And so we drive by the fire department quite a bit. And I'm driving by there, and I'm looking at my toddler. He's still he's only 8 months or so. And I was looking over to my wife, and I'm like, Rick started at 3 years old. Just saying. So I say this all the time. Every time we drive by, it's like, by the way, Rick started at 3 years old. So it became this staple in our home now. So it's funny. It's funny.
That's funny, Jeremy, because you're sharing that story. I'm thinking back to, I don't know how many times somebody would ring the doorbell and we would answer it, and it would be a young couple, and they would have, a child, maybe 1 year old, sometimes even younger than that. And Dad would say, yeah, Eddie here wanted to see the fire engines. It's like, come on, you want to see them, but you're afraid to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very true.
So true. So true. Anyway, but you did mention this incredible, the incredible part of, your wife and you, how you connected. And it's incredible how that, that through this friend, and then happens to be the friend of your father-in-law, and then, that whole sort of transition and everything. It's incredible how, we connect to that. And it so happens to be that tonight is my wife. Well, actually it was yesterday night, and today was my wife and I's 3rd year anniversary. We're married for 3 years. So working up to the 30 plus years that you're incredibly married for, which is huge and amazing. But we're working there 1 year at a time. But we were talking about it, and it's like, and that's what inspired my posts for this morning. It's really that leadership from within. Leadership starts from within.
Yes.
And that thing of everybody saying that this woman doesn't exist, or, stuff like that. For me, it was this thing of I don't accept when people say this cannot happen, or this cannot exist, or this whatever. But there was one thing in that sort of message that I was getting was, even if she does exist, why would she want to be married to you? Now that I could accept, because that ties in with that leadership thing. And it's because, well, all right, if I'm expecting something like this to happen, and this, in my particular case, in this story, it's about my wife getting attracted to me, but it's also, if I want this kind of life, or if I want this kind of outcome in my business, or if I want whatever it is, what kind of leader am I, or what kind of person am I to attract that kind of, response, if in a sense, right? So I think it was you or somebody else recently put up a post about their their employees are not listening to them, and the leadership doesn't know what to do, and why is it? And I said, and that was my comment. I was like, well, perhaps they should ask themselves, what kind of leaders are they?
Mm-hmm.
So that really ties into that, because it's really, there is a strong parallel between attracting the wife or the dream of your your life, and the type of leadership that you have. So I like this tie-in. So that's the topic of choosing the leadership style. I guess let's really kind of like break it down and go to, what are the leadership styles? What does it mean, leadership? What does that look like? So, leadership expert, please take it away.
Well, I want to come back to what you were just saying about attracting also, and throw out there, John Maxwell wrote the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And this is the 25th anniversary of that. So he's recently updated the book. But one of the laws is the law of magnetism. You attract who you are. And I mean, that is so true. Leadership styles. And leadership styles. I taught a leadership class. It's probably been within the last 10 or 15 years at a church that we were attending. And I asked the question, who in here are leaders? And I think there were about 50 some people approximately. So I said, who in here are leaders? I had 3 people raise their hands.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I asked, why did no one else raise their hands? And I just got a couple mumbles and stuff like that. So I said, whose fathers, whose mothers, uncles, brothers, so forth and so on like that. And I said, why did you 3 raise your hands? I was like, well, because I'm a supervisor at such and such company and so forth like that. So that's where some of the problem starts to begin, even before we start talking about leadership styles, is people think that they have to have a title or a position to make them a leader. Right. And a position of authority does not make a leader. Just because I was a battalion chief and I had 2 crossed, trumpets, speaking trumpets on my collar or in a badge, doesn't make me a leader. When I was in the military, stripes or, officers, with their collar, that doesn't make somebody a leader. And that's really a false notion that exists, out there. So coming back now to the leadership styles, I'll tell you and you guys and the listeners, here's a mistake that I made years back relative to leadership styles. And I got stuck into the false notion that I had to pick a style, and that was me. And I had to stick with that. And I'll tell you, you talk about a guy that had to learn some hard lessons. I mean, I had to learn some hard. I tell people I had an industrial belt sander put to my rear end more than one time, because of that stuff. But it's like, I say, authoritarian, that's me. Yeah, I'm the authoritarian guy. Now, I'm the sergeant. And how did I learn how to be a sergeant? Yeah, I went to NCO school, but I learned how to be a sergeant, by watching John Wayne and, and stuff like that. And it's like, and I still do like watching those movies, and you can learn a lot from them, but you can also learn what not to be.
Yeah.
Right.
From those movies. Because initially, the 3 styles that were taught for years and years and years, was authoritative, democratic, and laissez-faire. And I'll tell you, I thought for so long, I went years thinking laissez-faire, for all intents and purposes in my book, that was a 4-letter curse word.
It's true. That's the same.
And why? Because I didn't truly understand the concept behind laissez-faire. I was just thinking that, hey, it's these people, that I was working for at the time that just they didn't care, so forth like that. And I had mentioned in the pre-show about the podcast when you asked Baruch, what got him to study leadership, and he said poor leadership. I think, yeah, man, you're right on target. Because that's what got me to dig in the more. So as I progressed through the years and I learned more and I started digging in more on my own and reading and studying leadership, it's like two others popped up: transformational and transactional.
Yeah.
Oh, and the transactional is you do this or this is going to happen. You do this and you'll get this. It's like, well, okay, transactional. Yeah, I work for Loveland Fire Rescue Authority, and I go to work, and twice a month I got a paycheck. That's transactional. I was trading my hours for a paycheck. What I learned out of those 5 styles there, and then you mentioned in the podcast that there's so many more that are mentioned out there. Servant leadership has been big for I don't know, maybe 15 years or at least 15 years. Where it's gotten really popular. People talk about servant leadership, but transformational leadership. When we take that approach, that what is leadership? You mentioned them on the Maxwell team. Well, Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And there's a lot of truth, to that is, we are influencing people. I can influence people from a humane side, or I can influence them with the threat, of being fired, being written up, and so forth and so on like that. But when you look at leadership and management, and there's always that, age-old argument about that. And I break it down into the fact that leadership is people and management is things. I got a lot of things on the shelves behind me back there. You can tell I'm an avid reader. And when you manage that, you manage the shelf, you manage a commodity. And that's where things break down. There's too many people out there. They start to manage people. Yeah. And they treat them like they are a commodity. They treat them like they are boxes of styrofoam cups out in the warehouse floor. And when we treat people like that, they know that people don't want to be treated like a commodity. Right. You had mentioned that posting, and that wasn't me who put that up there, but there's hey, they don't listen to us. Well, they're not listening to them because they, and it's always they, the department of they, the infamous department of they. They are treating them like garbage because they think that they're a commodity.
Right.
And that doesn't work. Treat people like a human being and treat them with respect and start listening to them. And hey, maybe some things will start changing around a little bit.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, I really related to literally everything you said. And that's why I'm kind of like jumping in on Baruch's time here.
I somehow managed to unplug my microphone, so my speaker system went haywire. So I missed like the last 30 seconds. That's why I was looking like what's going on. Okay, sorry.
There's a replay. Just saying. No,
yeah, right.
But I just wanted to mention one thing that you said that I really related to, and I now have to find that article. I remember writing this article for school. Where you were talking about, in your time when you were learning leadership, it was about that authoritarian, the democratic, and the laissez-faire. Just for those who don't know what that means, the authoritarian is that, dictator type of person. The democratic is the one who kind of like tries to work with everybody. And the laissez-faire is just like somebody who's very passive and doesn't really care too much. And it's true. There was a very big time where they really focused on those 3 leadership styles. When I was going through school, the 3 leadership styles that they were most focused on were transactional, servant leadership, and transformational. And, the ones that they spoke about the most all the time, we always heard about transactional versus servant. For example, they would have categorized you because you were in the fire department as a service, as a servant leader, because you're doing a service to the community. So that's how they would have, categorized you. And I remember reading that, and they said, oh, we should really focus more on transformational because that's a great new leadership style that really we should focus on. And they kind of like looked at it as a thing to strive for. Not everybody does that. And I remember writing in that article, I said, in the past, people were looking at these leadership styles. Currently, we're looking at these leadership styles. but I'm going to predict that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to start talking about all of them and all the different elements that we could use from all the different leadership styles and combine them into one. And exactly what you just said, that because people are not commodities, they're not like these robots, I said it doesn't work that way. You cannot tell a person do this because I said so, or people have so many complicated elements to them that as a leader, somebody who's a true leader knows how to take from every thing and sort of like match himself to the situation, to the person, to the individual, to the whatever it is, and that is true leadership. So I wrote my article. The article was titled "True Leadership: The Style That Is Unmentioned." So it's like the combination of all of them. So that's why I very much related to what you were saying. It's so true, and you know what? We're seeing it today. We're seeing it now with this whole resignation thing, with all like people revolting. People think it has everything to do with the pandemic. I was like, no, guys, this was happening. And it just, the pandemic maybe accelerated it, but it's happening for years now. For years, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. To be honest with you.
Yeah, it was a catalyst.
Yeah.
And I like to add in about the servant leadership aspect. And here's a thought for people to think about. Yeah, I was a firefighter, and there's police officers, there's medics. We, the three realms there, are referred to as public servants. And I believe that there's a difference between a public servant and servant leadership. Yes, we serve the public, but when you go out, just hey, 911 call comes in and bang, you're out the door and you're doing whatever it is. For police officers, they're driving down the street and they see something going wrong or good, and they're stopping and they're intervening. I think when we look at true servant leadership, that comes into a deeper aspect, to where we as individuals are serving one another. We're seeing the needs that somebody has, and we're serving those needs. We're jumping in, we're pitching in. Some people, they are so averse to picking up a broom or a mop, because that's not my position. Well, servant leadership is like, hey, the boss, you see somebody out there, and they're already busy and the shop's dirty, pick up the broom, clean it up. I believe that's servant leadership. And what you're talking about too, Jeremy, is all these different pieces of leadership come together. It's like those cakes that my daughter Emily makes. There's so many things that go into a cake to make it taste good. If she left out the sugar, or the butter, then it's something goes wrong. But all these different ingredients go in to make a good tasting cake. And that's where I made the mistake years ago, is I didn't understand that leadership involves all these different elements that come together so we can apply them in different circumstances, because they don't get applied the same under every set of circumstances.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's a perfect transition into the next, segment, the next topic, which is finding the leadership style that works. Because I did not go to school for psychology or anything like that. My experience in education and my experience in leadership development has all solely been through my experiences in the workforce. I mean, as I mentioned on the podcast, like you said, like I got into leadership because I had poor leadership. In my years working at various schools, I had the leader that was a jerk. I had the leader that was the naive jerk. Then I had the invested leader. And that is how I learned the different pros and cons of different types of leadership. And while I couldn't put a title on it, like a transformative or transactional and all these things that you guys are saying, which I'm going to have to go look up, but at the end of the day, and like, that's the thing, is I don't want audience members to think that, hey, I don't know these different types. Like, sure, go look them up, but also just look at the leaders that you've had throughout your life and throughout your careers. Again, whether they're parents or aunts and uncles or bosses or employers, and what were the actions that they did, and how do they make you feel? Because that's really, I think, where the crux or the important aspect of leadership is. It's and what is actually being accomplished. Because I can call myself a transformative leader, I can call myself a servant leader, but if I'm not actually accomplishing that and bringing within the people that I'm working with those feelings and that action where they're driven or they're motivated to do it on their own and they feel like they're being served. Like today at camp, there was one of the rooms was a mess. I mean, there's no surprise there, but one of the rooms was a mess. My campers absolutely trashed the room, and one of my junior counselors started sweeping. I said, no, give me the room. You take a break. Okay, go on your phone, go get some water, whatever. Take a break. I'll clean this up. It's not his job. I mean, it's not his job. He was doing it because he felt it was the right thing to do, but I took that away from him because, hey, you've been working with the kids all day. Let me give you a break for 5 minutes. At the very least, it's the least that I can do. It wasn't very hard. It's very, on the contrary, it's very easy, but you know what? Hopefully he's going to remember that. And that's really what it is. So, coming back to that topic of finding the leadership style that works, I'm really curious to know how being in the being a firefighter and then being in the military, the two branches that you were in, how did you learn and how did you take various lessons from it? And what were some of those lessons? And how did you identify within each one what was good, what worked, and then what didn't work? And then how do you turn that into your style of leadership?
Yeah. What you're saying there, Baruch, really summed that up as to why I chose the title of my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, because it is a furnace. And one of the examples that I give in there is a glass paperweight. Growing up in southern New Jersey, the glass industry is big. It used to be bigger. And one of the places that we like to go to is called a Wheaton Arts and Village in Millville, New Jersey. And they've got a replica of the original glass furnace in there. I just love sitting there and watching the artist work. Yeah, and from the perspective of the glass paperweight, they bring out the glass, they work it until it starts to get cool. They put it back in the furnace, and that's running between 2,200 and 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. Comes back out cool. If it gets too cold, it cracks and it breaks. If it's in the furnace for too long, it'll boop, melt off. And so it's finding that right temperature. And for us to be good leaders, we have to be students of leadership. Yeah. We cannot, I've seen a lot of people, they make such a mistake. They'll read one book on leadership and that's it. Or they'll go to one class and it's one and done. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, have you been to any? Yeah, I went to a leadership class back in 1996. And then that was it. And there's no personal development on their part. So for me, knowing what was good, what was bad, this might sound really simple, but it's like when I worked for bad leaders, they made me feel bad.
Yeah.
They were, sometimes you feel like they went out of the way to put you down, to make you feel bad. When I worked for good leaders, they made me feel good. And I'm not saying that they were, sticking a lollipop in my mouth, and pat me on the back, that type of thing. But it's their actions, their behavior, what they were, the example that they were walking and that they were living in front of. Of course, the others were examples as well. And my advice to people, for several years has been, hey, keep a leadership journal. You're in a position, you're moving, keep a leadership journal. Write down the good and the bad, because you can draw it from your toolbox. You don't like the fact that you just got chewed out in front of 6 people, then don't do it. Don't do it yourself. And one story that really sticks out in my mind as I attended a fire department conference was down in San Diego back in January 2014. And one of the speakers, his name was Dennis Compton, and he had been bred through the Phoenix Fire Department system, and then he went on to be a fire chief in other agencies. And he was relating a story that when he was a captain in the Phoenix Fire Department, that an engine company, for people who don't know, an engine company is the pumper. The engine company pulled up in front of the station that he was at, and the crew got off, and they came in, and he was in a station where there was a battalion chief that was assigned there. And they came in, and the captain said, hey, my firefighter here has got an idea he'd like to talk to you about. And so this firefighter, newer, he shared his idea with the battalion chief, and Compton said the battalion chief just went off on this guy, just berated him, and just made the guy feel little, and they left. And Compton said, why in the world did you do that? And he said the guy turned around and he says he said he was angry, and he said because that's the way I was treated when I was a new firefighter.
Wow.
You know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
You that is not a license.
Yeah.
To treat that man that way, because what impact will it have on? Number one, he's not going to respect that BC. Mm-hmm. Number two is when he sees his vehicle pull up in front of the fire station, he's going to say, "Oh, here he is." I need to go find something to do.
Yeah.
Go clean spiders off the roof, anything to get away from that guy.
Sure.
That's terrible. That is absolutely terrible leadership. And so, I've taken those sorts of things too and put them into my toolbox that I can draw from. I like to read. I love studying history. The majority of these books back here are either leadership books or military history books. Yeah, and we can learn. And I want to address that thing about military and leadership. Is I've heard so many times where people saying, "Yeah, well, you did it because you had to." Well, yeah, there's a uniform code of military justice, and certainly, if you disobey an order, there's consequences that come along, with that. But I have a book back here that I used in a research project when I was going through the Executive Fire Officer program. My first year paper I wrote on making rapid tactical decisions under stress, and it's called Men Against Fire. And it was written by an Army colonel after World War II, and the Army had commissioned him to interview soldiers who had been in rifle companies, not airborne or Rangers, but a regular rifle company, which was averaging 100 soldiers per company. And what he found out, and it was completely, totally anonymous, guaranteed anonymous, because the Army was curious how many of them were actually firing their rifles. I was astonished when I read this. Out of an average 100-man rifle company in the Army in World War II, 60% were not firing their rifles.
Wow.
60%.
Wow.
But yeah, wait a minute, fellas. They're in the military. They could be punished.
Right.
That goes to show me that just because somebody's in the military, that does not automatically mean that you're going to follow orders.
Right.
Because somebody's in the fire department or a paramilitary organization doesn't mean people are going to follow orders. So how do you do this stuff? That's the $1 million question. How do we take all these things, and mold them together and say, all right, when do I apply this particular style? Even at a fire, I went to a fire and I look back on it, the times where I actually had to use an authoritarian, hey, this has got to be done. Do this now. It was something that was very critical that was happening like that, and I needed to issue that type of order. The bulk of the time, no. I would divide it out, put people in supervisory positions, and we would communicate with each other. If they were able, they'd come back to the command vehicle, and I'd have maybe like a fire tac group supervisor or a support group supervisor, and they'd come back to the command vehicle. We would discuss what we needed to accomplish. Bang, that's it. Okay. The two of them would go back and they'd talk to the people that were working underneath of them, and I do my thing back in the command vehicle, with a bigger picture. I didn't have to micromanage them. It comes back down, do we trust these folks, that work for us? And that's a big, and they know, I know, and you guys would too. When somebody doesn't trust you, it's because they're hovering over you all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, what you're saying is very much in line with Pinchas has a comment here. Leadership styles can be so different, but often the best leadership style is the one when each person feels like their leader is a match to them. That's what you're saying, and that's what we've been saying all along, and that's incredible. And everything you shared has just been amazing. Yurmi, I know you wanted to say something.
I actually want to expand on. I did see the comment come up, and then I was too focused on what Rick was saying, but it does tie in a lot to my little comment on expanding on what Pinchas was saying and sort of validating what Rick was saying, or more like echoing what Rick was saying about the paperweight, that the glass paperweight, and how the glass at different temperatures reacts in different ways. In fact, in the Jewish prayer of Yom Kippur, on the holiest day of the Jewish faith, in those prayers, just for those who don't know, it's literally from like it's a holiday of about 25 hours, which is mostly spent in prayer. So the entire community is in synagogue for almost the entirety of that 25 hours, let alone sleep. But for the majority of those 25 hours, there's prayer, and it's perfect fasting. There's no eating. There's no drinking. It's a time to mimic the angels in a sense. So that's what Yom Kippur. That's the gravity of Yom Kippur. One of the most important prayers in Yom Kippur, and we say this multiple times in different areas of the prayers. It becomes a song because people like to sing it. But there's one part in there that said, like, there's all these like similarities. God acts this way, and we are sort of like this reaction to the way God acts. One of them is God is the glass maker, and we are the glass. So sort of like God molds our life in a sense, and whatever way our life goes, it goes that way. But what you are saying and what Pinchas was saying is actually the true definition of that prayer, in a sense that God fixes his own leadership style towards us, what we need. We spoke about this a couple of episodes ago, that we don't get things that, like God doesn't give us more than what we can handle. That's what it is. That's that glass, the glass maker, and we are the glass in his hands. It's that leadership style. And why do I bring this up? It's like exactly what you were saying, and I'm echoing that, is that those negative leaderships give us this negative narrative towards whatever it is. So we talk a lot about that organized religion. Why do so many people have issues with organized religion? Well, it's more likely because of the poor leadership that was within that organization. If there was a good, I could remember so many teachers who were incredible teachers, and perhaps that's why I have a strong love to learning, and I have a strong love to discovering more. Whereas, Baruch was sharing in today's episode, where he had experience with negative leadership, and he's one of the lucky ones who said, "I'm not going to be like this. I want to study how to be better."
Right.
So I'm echoing what you were saying and how important it is. If we are the make it or break it of our organization, of our family, of our whatever it is, our surrounding. I like to say, walk the walk before you talk the talk. People say talk the talk, walk the walk. No. Walk the walk, then talk the talk. Be that good leader. And then when people say, "Wow, how are you doing it?" then talk. Then express how you're doing it, because that is what people want. Like, that's how you form true relationships and better leadership.
Yeah, I'd like to add in what Pinkus was saying, as I think back to our fire station 2 in my department, where we had an engine with 3 people assigned to it, but we had a heavy rescue also with 3 people, sometimes 4. So I could go out to that fire station, there could be 6 to 7 people out there. So let's just say 6 for this example. If you walk in, they're dressed the same, wearing the same uniform and so forth like that, but they are not the same. Yes, they've been trained, at a basic level and so forth like that. And this comes back to where people look at humans as a commodity, is those 7 people in that fire station are 7 different individual personalities. And how I lead is going to resonate in a different form with each one of them. Because some people, Baruch, you had mentioned on the podcast about sometimes people need a kick in the seat of the pants. and but some people, they'll wilt like a flower.
Yeah.
And it's incumbent upon the leader to learn these things. And some people say, "I don't have time to do that. You're crazy." And I've heard fire chiefs in the past say, and I understand some place like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Los Angeles, places like that, but definitely in the smaller fire departments where I've heard chiefs say, I don't have time to be out with the troops. Like, well, I'll throw a question out here. Why did Winston Churchill have time during World War II to go visit the coal miners, to go visit the steel workers?
Right.
Why did Napoleon have time to go out to the front lines? Why did George S. Patton, the commanding general of the Third Army in World War II, have time to go out to the front lines where there was the shooting? So we need to be careful, in a leadership position to say, I don't have time, when you look at just those three positions right there. I was fortunate. I was fortunate, because as the shift commander, go up, say, hey, guys got anything going? Nope. They put on a pot of coffee. I'm on my way out. I go out, we could sit there, and we could visit. We could talk about what's going on in the day in the department, pass on official information, and then the conversations, could morph maybe a lot of war stories, and then talk about leadership. But it's getting to know people, spending 5-10 minutes with somebody to find out about what is it that you like about your job here? Is there anything that we can do differently? That stuff right there is worth gold.
Yeah. Well, to bring it into the home, I don't have time was one of those things that I've been saying for a while. I was talking to Jeremy about this, and I was working with my coach and counselor. I actually my post today was really about this, because for the longest time I've been trying to work on my coaching business and with what Jeremy and I are working on, but then also what I do individually. And I've been stagnant for like the last 2-3 years. And it's been this vicious cycle of, I don't have time for my family because I have to work on my business. But while I'm at business, I feel guilty that I'm not with my family. But when I'm with my family, I feel, and it's this thing that goes over and over and over again. And I kept telling myself, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. In the last 2 weeks, I turned to my wife and I said, you know what? If faith, family, and future are the three things that are my core values, really, they're what I base everything around, I've got to make time for that. So I have my time to practice faith. And what really started shifting things was taking that time for family. So I have that time because I'm making that time. 6:30 to 8 o'clock on twice a week. It's family time. I'm at home doing dinner with the family, no matter what, no phones, nothing. Sundays, there's time in the morning for work and coaching. There's time in the afternoon, but the crux of the majority of the day is family time, because you have to make that time. And the flip of that is, okay, so from 4 o'clock until 6:30 on those 2 nights, that's work time. 8 o'clock and on is work time. Wednesday and Thursdays are my busy days. I'm not home from 4 o'clock until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, because that is the agreement that we have. But that's the thing is we referenced this before. Leadership happens everywhere, but especially in the home. And as we said at the very beginning, leadership starts with you. You need to be a leader in your life. The more you're a leader in your life, then those people around you will be able to follow, and they'll know how to be led. So, I'm glad you mentioned that I don't have the time, because everybody has 24 hours. It's just a matter of how we choose to use it. And when you really lean into what each hour is going to be utilized for, it takes away the stress. I'm no longer stressed from 6:30 to 8 about not being working, because now I'm working with my family. Now I'm with my family. When I'm at work or when I'm working on my business, I'm not stressed about not being with my family. And the kicker was, I absolutely hated my job. Don't tell my bosses. I absolutely hated my job.
He's not watching.
Huh?
He's not watching it. I'm joking.
Yeah, well, you know what? He actually did watch one episode. So, it was causing so much strife and agony and anxiety. But when I made that shift to schedule out my time and then really focus on what I want to be doing, I'm not loving my job, but it's something I know I need to show up to. And I'm actually happier at it now than I was before, because I know that come 3:30, I leave and I get to focus on those things that are really important to me. So again, I just wanted to kind of reflect on that and echo what you were saying there, because that whole idea of I don't have the time, you have the time, especially as a leader. You need to make the time to meet with your people.
Yeah.
I actually want to expand on this in just a second. Let's just do the clubhouse announcement, but then I want to end off on this because this is so important. It does really tie everything in a bow, what we're talking about. But let's just announce the Clubhouse. We did have the episode today on Amazon, or Apple, Spotify, all the different areas where you get your podcast from. We were there. Bark and I spoke for about 20 minutes on this topic. You're here now, and you're watching the awesome Rick talking to us about these incredibly important topic, leadership. It starts from within, and then it expands outward. And tomorrow in the Clubhouse, so at 7 o'clock on Clubhouse, we have this show again, where you, the audience, have a voice. It is something that Baruch and I highly pride ourselves in, the environment that we created, where everybody gets a chance to talk. The average of a person speaks about close to 10 minutes for the entire show. Three times, we go about 3 times around for about 3 minutes each. So the average person talks about 10 minutes. That's airtime for you. So please come join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. In the Clubhouse. That's Thursday, July 14th. You could either find the links down here, or you could just go to Clubhouse and look for the Exceptionally Irresistible Show and the one that's scheduled for tomorrow. We would love to hear your voice and your feedback and your opinions and your inputs and all of the above. So that
I'm
is
just going to add, Rick is a frequent flyer at the Clubhouse, and he's a guest on our show.
I think he has the highest amount of points on.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
for sure.
Flyer program.
Platinum, diamond, whatever it is. Okay, so Rick is one of our Clubhouse members. Pinchas, who left the comment on the live show, is also one of our top flyers there.
Yeah.
And Rick is on our live show. Pinchas we got something in the works with him. So you never know. Come to Clubhouse and you'll end up on one of our live shows.
That's right. And so that really is what I want to end off this show on, is to talk about how to apply that leadership style. And we started talking on that, and I want to expand just a little bit on that. Applying that leadership style, like Rick was saying, really taking that time and investing that time in, the people that you are leading. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're your followers, but it could be anything. Because if we start seeing them as important individuals, so I like to say, Baruch and I, we talk a lot about this. People want to be seen, heard, and validated. That's the biggest gift you could give anybody at any given time. If you see them, if you hear them, and if you validate them, that's a true leader, and somebody who is able to do that. And that takes a lot of growth, takes a lot of work, but that's what it ultimately takes, to take all kinds of styles. When you listen to somebody and when you pay attention on somebody, then you are able to grab from every area. And like Rick was saying, and I'd love him to a little bit expand a little bit more on it. Being an avid reader, being an avid, constantly growing on myself as a leader is how I learn to apply everything I've ever learned. So, Rick, this is my takeaway from what you were sharing today. I'd love it if you could kind of wrap this up for us, because I love what you were sharing, and I so much relate to it.
How do we apply this? Coming back to what Baruch was saying, leadership starts with ourselves. And as we lead, we're going to make mistakes. I could probably pull up another book with those, but own up to the mistake. So many people will not do that. The people who are working for you, when you've made a mistake and you come back and you say, I handled this situation wrong, they're going to respect that, and they are going to acknowledge that. And then we take that and we learn from that. And so we learn from these various situations. We learn from when we make a mistake. We learn from when we do good. We learn from watching other people. We learn from, just observing when we're out and about and reading and so forth like that. And then sometimes it's a test lab, to see how it's going to work. I think, well, I'm going to apply this particular style here. And, it comes across as heavy-handed. And as we develop trust with people that we're leading, and we make it safe for them to come back to us when we say, hey, what am I doing wrong? And we listen to what they're saying, and we don't fight with them and argue with them. We listen, and we got to humble ourselves. We got to drive a stake through our ego
Mhm.
And then when we start understand, leadership involves human behavior, and we have to understand elements of human behavior to be able to apply leadership, to know when it's time that I'm going to take this person here and I'm going to work with them and I'm going to teach them and we're going to be transformational. Or, you know what, hey, this needs to be done now, that's that authoritative. When these things are already established, it makes it easier, but it doesn't happen overnight. None of this stuff happens overnight.
Right. Wow. Love it.
Yeah. Baruch, want to wrap us up?
Sure. Well, it was an absolute pleasure, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
on
you.
the
I
stage.
appreciate it.
I can't reiterate. I can't say it enough how grateful we are that you joined us and that you're an active part of our community. Again, that is what this was all about. This is always for Yermi and I. It's always been about community, and having community members like yourself who are involved. It's been incredible. But then also being able to learn from you and everything that you shared tonight. I've got my notes. But I'm also going to be doing the recap afterwards and typing it up for everybody else. So I'm just really grateful and sharing your story, even though I've heard it many times already. Every time some other detail stands out, and I just learn from it every time. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you to all of our audience members for participating, for joining, for watching, and those of you who are watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. Engage. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is, in fact, our clubhouse. And you know what? We have about 3 minutes left. Rick, if you could take a minute and a half to share with us why you show up to Clubhouse, I think that'll really seal it nicely, because it's not Yermi and I saying, oh, we're doing something amazing and different. Like, we are, but you're a participant in Clubhouse. So for the next minute and a half, why do you show up?
I think from the very beginning, I want to add. I think it was from the very beginning. I don't think Rick has missed a single show, both on live and on Clubhouse, which we're just mind blown.
There was that period where you were traveling for like a week or two, so I don't think you missed a week on Clubhouse, but otherwise,
there was. I showed up here first, and I loved it. I loved the different perspectives that I was hearing. It challenged me. I was growing. And then when I came on the Clubhouse, and I love the way that both of you manage that. It's not some wild, crazy free-for-all like some of those other things on Clubhouse. There, it's like, it's like you could turn on the television news or a talk show and get that same thing. You guys are not like that, and I appreciate that. It's very professionally run. You mentioned Pinkus, who's on here. I love hearing, the people that show up and their perspectives and what they have to say. It's like I was telling a friend last night, I find it intellectually challenging. I walk away from Clubhouse saying, wow, I have been fed. I have been fed, and I can take what I'm hearing, and I may not always agree with everything, but I don't even agree with everything I say,
Right.
But I grow, and that's why I love it, and I love that opportunity to provide the input and then to listen to what the two of you are saying and your guests are saying as well.
Love it. Thank you. That's a great wrap. And you know what? That's really what it's all about. It's not about Yermi and I. It's about everybody who joins us and the opportunity that they can have. So join us on the live shows. Join us in Clubhouse. Thank you all already for joining us. And we will see you next week for episode 23.
Yes.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.